Hey there, bonjour, guten Tag, ¿cómo estás? We have a great guest today, Derek Bartoluccelli, Leslie Powers in the place to be, les amis, our friends, and yeah, this conversation is going to line up very synchroniciously in regards to our past couple of guests we've had with Hector Combo and Soul Expression, and just some of these overarching things that we've seen and observed for well over a decade in the truth seeking and speaking realms of things, and trying to like pierce more veils, and at the same time get more people onto this pathwork that are still kind of stuck within the matrix and all these things that are keeping them polarized and divided amongst each other and stuff. And so we even see these in the higher levels of awareness, unfortunately, and there's just like a lot of residual stuff we gotta get the lead out, and go through that alchemical process to keep it golden. So yeah, Leslie, you always got a golden touch. And
Well, thanks everybody for watching. We're really happy to have Henna Maria with us today, and I'll take a minute here to read her bio to introduce all the work that she's doing. Henna Maria is a medicine woman, an activist, speaker, poet, and a teacher of natural law. Henna was initiated into the art of healing song by indigenous Shipibo masters and specializes in the ceremonial practices of ayahuasca. Now Henna and her husband Richard run their own healing sanctuary, Whiston Origins, and are stewards of a beautiful medicine garden in the Peruvian Amazon. That's wonderful. Combining her love for spirituality and activism, in 2019, Henna founded Dawn of Peace, a creative community and peace organization. Her advocacy focuses on the spiritual reality of life, human and animal rights, medical freedom, and self-sovereignty. In 2021, Henna co-founded the International Police for Freedom movement to advocate for natural rights, rehumanize our societies, and facilitate respectful collaboration between activists and police. In 2022, Henna sparked up the Save Our Food initiative in response to the fear around food scarcity, environmental crises, and agriculture collapse. Her latest endeavor in the spring of 2023 has been to co-found a cultural association, Kotin Palu, Finnish word for homecoming, with the goal of reviving and protecting indigenous Finnish culture and establishing the foundations for a parallel natural society. So that's a lot of good work. Bridging two continents, and that's marvelous.
Yay.
So, and we're here all about, helping to promote peace and freedom and bring natural law and, harmony to the world. So you're doing great works here, Henna. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, guys. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for creating this space. It's really an honor to be here.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we see you as so active in the world of solution and activism. And I think that this is such an important step, for people's, I guess, evolution once they see what's going on in the world and start to understand some of the causes, the causal factors. And I wanted to just maybe see if you could share a little about what's really inspired you to do the work you do and the mission of your work here.
Thank you. Well, I that's something I ask myself. I'm actually looking at a photo of me on the other side of this room where I'm a 3-year-old, and I have that same spark in my eye. And I honestly think I was born with this. Like, I many people ask me like, what was it? But I was always wondering like, what is wrong with our society ever since I was a kid? I don't know. Like, I felt like everyone's like walking dead somehow. Like, where's the life? I think I recognized that I'm a zoo animal quite early on, like that this is not the way to live. Like the modern society is holding us all captive, and especially our minds. And so I was a bit of a rebellious kid. I always loved to learn. And I was always trying to somehow like bring people together around all these different causes. So ever since I was a kid, I would create these different clubs and different things. Like we were practicing martial arts together in the forest, and we would like try to learn all the different kinds of clouds in the sky. And it's just serendipity. I just think like, what was that about? Because now I've recently done a conference around geoengineering. So, having learned what natural clouds look like at a very young age out of my own interest in like celestial phenomena and then weather formation, and then realizing very quickly like, okay, what it's not about. So, yeah, there's just been this in like I don't know, internal quest for truth and curiosity that I was born with, and then yeah, very quickly feeling like I don't really fit in the modern society. So I actually I moved away from home when I was 16 to go to an expressive art school. And that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I found my kindred spirits. And I find that artists and activists are pretty much like this. So that's really when it started for me, is when I found myself surrounded by people who were thinking differently, who were thinking creatively, who wanted to somehow feel and express and be alive. And that's what I feel that artists are doing. And so I think just following my heart's calling, and then quite early on finding myself in an environment where it was safe to be curious and safe to be courageous and safe to explore, like that artistic kind of foundation. That's really what springboarded me into the activism as well. So by the age of 18, I was already like involved in different kinds of street campaigns, and been on that path ever since. So I would just say, yeah, it's something that I was born with, but also probably because the society here in Finland is quite homogenous and quite like uniform. We have this welfare, socialist, modern way where you just do what you're told and you pay your taxes and thank the government that we have everything working here. But underneath it all, there's a lot of depression, a lot of emotional issues, a lot of alcoholism. So just those two stories didn't quite line up for me. And so I left, started exploring the world at the age of 18. Then I already moved to California. And I've been living in different parts of the world. So I would also say the cultural imprint has done a lot to broaden my mind, and also kind of comparing like the media outtake as well. Like I remember when I was living in the States, yeah, at the age of 18, I would have phone calls with my older brother in Finland, and we would be comparing the news, like how are the Finnish media reporting something to do with American foreign politics and what I'm seeing while I'm there, and comparing the news. And then that's what woke me up to like this major lie about journalism, that as if there were real journalists in mainstream media. And so I stopped watching television then. I threw away my television. I grew up, in like throughout my adulthood without that influence. So I never was conformed. My mind was never put into a box. So I think that would be some of the influences there, like why I'm responding to what I'm seeing, because I'm not brainwashed, basically.
Right. You were able to see
Yeah.
it from an outside perspective somewhat,
Yeah.
dirtied, unblocked.
Yeah.
That's I, one question, follow-up question, and then I'll give it to Derek. But so this idea of how culture is suppressing the artistic spirit or the creative impulse. So to share a little more about how you think that happens. What is it about kind of modern culture that is like clamping down on that individual expression?
Hmm. Yeah, actually, would even hesitate to use the word culture of what is going on in these times, because I see that culture is something that actually is nourishing and allowing the soul to become cultivated and for the soul to grow. And I think what is prevailing is like the anti-culture, like it's the death cult. It's not a culture. So what happened to all the songs? What happened to all the stories, the folklore, the medicine, the colors, like just even the way people dress? I'm like, what is going on? Indigenous society, if you see the way people dress, they're feathers and beads, and they're like living flowers in their hair and all the colors of the rainbow. It's like, what happened to the celebration of life? It's just so fundamental. It's like on all levels of society. I think it's a lot to do with communication, that we are taught from an early child that we're not allowed to speak, that we have to sit and listen a lot, like children are somehow segregated from, I don't know, events, just there's the children's table, that's where you play, but you're not allowed to take part in these conversations. And yeah, just so much control, the way the schooling system is, the way every part about your education is, it has to somehow stay within a certain framework, like you're not allowed to question things. And yeah, I mean, we know all of this, right? Like it's just it's yeah, it's a prison for the mind. The way, like, you're fed this false idea about this life, even who we are as a being, even about history, about like our gifts, like what is a human being capable of doing. So I was always interested from a young age, like things that are supernatural, or like genius, like where does that come from, what is the human potential? But that's not what our education is about. It's about memorizing, it's about conforming, it's about getting into this box so you could be a good slave, basically. Yeah, it's so inbred, it's even difficult to explain it. It's like the entirety of life is in this grid of control and conformity.
Yeah, and I can relate and understand more than your average American because I've been living in France for the past like 15 years. And so, yeah, I understand how things are like, like the ceiling is pretty fucking low and you could see it. It's, not even a glass ceiling and stuff. And it's pretty cut and dried, especially how the education system is very determining as far as, what people are going to choose and how their career path is going to be and whatever kind of job they might get. And they're just like got this fixed income and like that's going to be your life for the next 50 fucking years. And like hey, good luck. Just enjoy your cog in the wheel type of thing. It's like, wow, okay. Then yeah, you get people that just want to drop out and just do whatever, rebel through their art and all these things. And so yeah, I think that freedom of expression is that rebellious way of life in its own pure essence, I think. So yeah, that's a
Hmm.
cool path you took. And I know what you mean with the activism and the artistry, musicians and stuff. And yeah, where are like the other songs of redemption? Is there really only one Bob Marley, one John Lennon, one song? Like I have it. Like it's like like yeah.
I really
Here,
appreciate
here.
those things you mentioned about control and the suppression of organic, sort of authentic communication, spontaneity, spontaneous learning, right? Putting everything in a kind of a cage way of learning, segregating children. I think that's huge. That's one of my observations too, when I've traveled in like Mexico and, the kids go with, the kids are very present, with the adults. And there isn't such an emphasis on childcare, where you send your kids, as much away. And I like what you said about, the color and the wardrobe and the expression, where there's a connection to nature, to beauty, and I think that that's very indicative of a culture, culture that recognizes their interconnection with nature that a lot of our modern world has lost. And you've also mentioned this idea of, in Finland, how there's a homogeneous nature, a kind of a losing of the color and the difference and the uniqueness that may be somehow connected to having all their needs met by the government, as opposed to from organically within a community experience. And, what are your thoughts on that?
Mm.
What's the impact of having the government take care of all your needs versus, doing it from the base of a community?
Yeah, I think the government can only come in if they have broken the tribes and if they have broken the families apart, because otherwise they would have no place. So they are basically there because of trauma. So like I don't know exactly where it started, but Industrial Revolution was one of the major steps where the fathers were taken away from home and separated from the family. And then came this need for security and government trying to somehow fulfill that place, that of the like missing father in the home. And so you break this heritage of, the father going with their son and teaching their craft. So no longer is that happening. The father has become a wage slave, and then the children have to be schooled in an institution. And I think it's through that mechanism that the family unit was broken apart, and the mothers, could no longer sustain the household by themselves. So then daycare and schooling and all this started happening. And when this intimacy is broken, like insecurity begins to be born in the families. And then when there is no time for the father to be present at home and take care of the needs of the home and of the community, the neighborhood, then there needs to be some kind of external institutions that start doing that on your behalf because you're not present. You're away and working, you know, who knows how many hours, probably 12, 14-hour days. And so I think it all comes back to that. And when that's become a tradition now over several generations, we don't even know what that feels like to have a community where all the fathers are present, all the mothers are present, the children are present. And then there's trust. If you can truly trust your family, all the families are intact, then they create like a larger, it's all natural law, as within, so without. So they create this living organism. But if you break every cell, they become disconnected, and the organism begins to disintegrate. And then this foreign invasion can happen where this inhumane, fundamentally immoral and violent institution can come in and starts to play the father, and then now the mother as well, because the mothers are also a wage slave and a taxpayer. So through deception, through, trauma, through war, through breaking the neighborhoods and the family unit, yeah, there's so we've lost this connection to each other. So we no longer think like, oh, how could we organize this community together so we could fix this road? We just expect that daddy government is going to do it on our behalf. And it's so unnecessary. Like all the labor is created by us. All the machinery is created by us. Every single thing, we could just pay them directly. We don't need this thieving corporation to get the taxes so that we can get our roads fixed. It's always the road question, like when you start talking about government. And same with the
Yeah.
healthcare. We are healers. We have spaces, we have land, we can grow our own food. We can do it all. And we were doing it all. And it's a, indigenous form of society has been proven to work over multiple millennia. That this is the fundamental, organic, original way that humanity would organize. And this modern, this like centralized government control, this is very new, and this is completely unnatural and foreign to us, and it's not working. It's so clear that it's not working. Why don't we just ditch it already?
Right? It seems that people
Yeah.
have forgotten and really lost connection to their own roots, and the potential from that's really still, I think, present in our blood. But there's been a good job by the social engineers of cutting us from our roots. And now we're so habituated, most people are habituated to the current ways of being and believe there's no other way, right? They're afraid. that insecurity you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
loss of trust, within family and community units, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, really, I really appreciate how you articulated the problem there. And so what do you see as the biggest, do you have a sense of some of the biggest problems? Like if we were to say, okay, as a community who sees these problems and we were to organize somehow together to alleviate some of these issues, how would you prioritize? Do you have a sense of that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think we have to go to the root, like in order to apply the correct remedy, we have to recognize the malady, we have to have a diagnosis. So I see that we have to go right back to the family unit and right back to this sense of community and working to create trust again. I think trust is fundamental. And if you look at like what was the thing that everyone was seeking over the last 5 years when we had this tremendous polarity happening, everyone was seeking safety one way or another based on their worldview, the information that they were able to digest. People were choosing how they would act in this time by the way that they thought that they would secure safety in their lives. So if we are able to start building trust again between each other, it's a cultural thing, it's a social thing that we have to do. Then people can actually start to listen to each other and take in this information. It's not about the infinite information is not available. It is available. And we were all, like we were blasting it out. So it's not a question of, oh, these people are nation, they have no idea. No, they are choosing not to receive it because they don't trust us. That's how tragic the situation is. The family unit has broken so badly that we don't even trust our own siblings or parents or children. Rather, we heed the advice of a complete stranger on a screen. So it's a purging, it's a purification process that needs to happen on an individual and collective level. We need to first get rid of these sources of sorcery, basically, like these spells, these mental prisons that are put on us through all these different virtual sources. I would say that it wouldn't even really be happening if we didn't have radio, television, and internet. Because if you actually were just present with the people in your life, you could speak to them and you could find out what's really going on. It's all like conjured up images of, these false flag crises and all these ideologies that are very hostile and causing segregation, causing this kind of persecution of anarchists and anti-vaxxers and what have you. It's
Yeah.
all like very hostile spells that are being broadcasted through the media. So how
Yeah.
about starting to just strip away these external influences and returning back to the family unit and returning back to your friends, your relationships, your neighborhood, and starting to somehow revive this bond, this and focus on how to actually like enliven the humanity, this sacred connection between us so that we can be present and then from this place start to actually have a dialogue of what is going on here. You know? How have we
Yeah.
organized ourselves? How have we organized the society? What is the reason we are even here on this earth? Are we able to actually do a lot of what we are desiring to do without this current system? Can we minimize, go back to the basic and just take care of our fundamental needs and then from there start rebuilding?
Yeah. Yeah. That concept of seeking safety is really key. And as you know, I'm a trained psychotherapist, social worker, and this concept of safety is really inherent to all of our emotional health and our ability to function well in the world. And it's a physiological experience. It's more than just an intellectual idea. You know, this media and all of this sorcery you're referring to really creates a sense of unsafety. You know, people listen to this and that activates, you know, their survival system based on fear that's really propagated. And so, yeah, building trust with each other and also building trust with your own self, I think, you know, your own ability to discern. And as you said, you know, that detox, you know, from this, all these, this messaging and this fabricated message, you know, media and culture from the death culture, right? You know, if we want to look at it like that, if we can separate, detach, and detox and reestablish a sense of safety within ourselves and our space and our immediate environment, and then rebuild and heal relationships, right? That seems truly like getting back to the root and the recreation, creating
Mhm.
a foundation that's healthy and has a chance.
Yeah, because otherwise there's no way to build unless we come together. This is something that I've discovered. And that's why I love this whole fundamental message of your podcast, Dissolving the Divide. That is the ultimate key because that is their war strategy. And they are very happy when they have us in different camps fighting amongst ourselves about things that are like mental concepts and beliefs. And we're too busy doing that, yapping around online, that we don't like know our fundamental like life skills are actually perishing. Like how to build a house, how to make clothing, how to grow food, how to source water, how to heal ourselves from natural remedies. Like how do we actually recognize what are edible, forageable plants, like the fundamental like life skills of us as an animal, they are pretty much gone. This is why I use the zoo animal phrase. I think like I'm kind of a lot of this like just talking and talking and talking. It's we need to move back to like how do we live? How do we act? And it's so valuable when we have these conversations and then we turn them into action. But if they stay on only this mental plane, it's also another distraction, I think. It's another way to just keep us busy so that we don't see the cage and say that, wait a minute, this is part of the problem. Like, what are we doing on earth concretely? What are we embodying in our lives? What is the change that we are concretely creating? And I think this is spirituality, is beliefs and goals turned into real life action. Without that action part, it's a fantasy.
Fantasy, like illusion, part of your
Yeah.
title of that video that you and Leslie were alluding to. It's only like 15 minutes. It was a good one. Virtual realities, influencers, and illusions. Yeah,
Yes.
spot on
Yeah.
for sure. And yeah, we got to take it back to the roots and go back to the golden era and the golden nuggets of our ancestors and what really worked well for them in living as sovereign beings, just even if it was like in a tribal village type of setting. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when there's no governing bodies over them and coercing them to do whatever and dividing them from each other. And so I was wanted to ask, because I feel like this would be a really great solution and archetype for folks to focus on to get away from the government and be more self-empowered, is to look to the ancient ancestors as well as the Norse mythology and all that stuff. And I know that's really prevalent in, obviously Nordic countries. And I was curious if that's popular, if you noticed a revival of that, and how people could, look to that and be positively influenced by it, if you will. Even though that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a weaponized term these days, but you know what I mean. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really at the core is cultural revival. Actually, that's the way back home. That's the way back to our roots. And Norse mythology is more from Scandinavian culture. So I'm more familiar with so Finns. Actually, many people don't know, but we are not Scandinavian. So we are like a completely different tribe. So our mythology is called Kalevala, and that's what J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is based on. Yeah. So we had this character Vainamoinen who was like the most powerful sage and healer and wise man of all time, which is like Gandalf in his work. But yes, that is coming back. That's the wonderful thing. Like I'm seeing it probably in the like Norway and Sweden and Denmark region, Iceland, probably the Norse mythology and Odin and Thor and all these characters are coming back. But in Finland, we are definitely having a cultural revival, and and our association, our cultural association, is a big part of really like like emphasizing that and empowering that as well. And I think the wonderful thing about this entire thing is realizing that we don't have like, I've been struggling with this idea of like evolution. So that's why I'm using the word revival, because I think it's easier to access that actually we just need to bring back something that is already within us and has already existed. So we knew that it worked. We know that it worked. So rather than evolving into something that we don't know what it is, because it's something we've never been before, so we need to reach some unknown destination, I love to use the word revival or remembrance. So like remembering who we are. And I think something that is part of the fundamental spiritual sickness of our time is the insatiable spirit. And this is something I could talk about for the rest of the podcast, honestly, because that's something I'm very passionate about, is recognizing how it functions. But one of its faces is definitely to create this idea of insatiability, meaning and nothing is enough. So in terms of like, how do we live this life? This modern way is constantly trying to develop into something. Whereas what if we just like took a little moment and breathed and called in that remembrance of the way that we have lived and traversed this earth for millennia, which was enough. We already had it all. And every time a civilization, an empire has fallen, it's because they left from this place of golden middle way and this place of enough. And they tried to start seeking for this never-ending growth and development into something that is just unreachable enough to keep it going and to keep striving for the next, for the next, for the next. And this is how all these things blew up. And then the Tower of Babylon would be erected because people were reaching to become God themselves. And then every time this empire would fall and then reorganize itself and change its face, it's a seven-headed beast, so then it would turn into something else and something else and something else. And this is why I think like I'm really like starting to drop in the beginning of my spiritual journey. I was all about evolution and evolution of humanity, evolution. And then now I'm like, wait a minute, no, it's revival. It's revival because we already had this, and there's so many counts of this in sacred scripture. In shamanic, if you talk to indigenous people, they remember the way it was because their oral traditions are still alive. It's still intact. And it's not to say that life was without challenge. I think that's one of the fundamental elements of life, is that it keeps challenging us for us to grow, but to grow in harmony with the earth, in harmony with each other. So we're growing not at the cost of anything else. Our growth is only nourishing. It's only like it's a blessing. So this is like growth that is organic and natural. But where we're now, it's not growth. It's a insatiable quest for nothing, for the sake of nothing. And that's why you have this rat race and this spinning wheel that is never ending.
Yes, it's very similar to what Gabor Mate talks about in the realm of hungry ghosts. He has a book where he's addressing addiction, right? And that
Yeah.
insatiability, ultimately comes from trauma and emotional loss, lost attachments, disconnection, and seeking something that, through means that will never fill that hole, right? And it's like this technology, this striving is like a good example of that. It's, we keep expanding something that is not natural in a sense to try to fill a natural need that we already have the answers to without having to go searching,
Yeah.
and how to
Yeah.
embody it, right? And because it's that whole idea of seeking safety in your own self, it's an experience, right? And it comes through relational experiences. And so I think you're right, totally on, like in terms of we need to get out of the head and this cognitive, analytical, intellectual, like defining of the problem. I mean, it's important. We need to understand the problem, but then how do we then create real life scenarios that bring a repair, right, into our nervous systems, a sense of safety that repairs relationships, where we can then access this inner wisdom and the revival of like this occulted knowledge and this living library, right, of our indigenous ancestors.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to what you said about the recognizing the problem. And I think because in the West, and it's so funny, I just used I think because we are thinking, we're constantly thinking, and our like higher chakras are very evolved in the West here. And it's interesting when you live in indigenous community, like I was living in the rainforest in Peru and communicating with the Shipibo and realizing how differently they dissect and communicate reality and express themselves. For them, it's not really a thinking thing. They just see it. Imagine how much life force is saved when you don't have to conceptualize. When your organs of perception are so intact and so pure, so like unharmed, then you can just look at something and you can see it. So you don't have to constantly explain and conceptualize and figure things out because you are able to recognize law in action. You're able to recognize cause and effect. You're able to see with your third eye. You can see into the spirit, so you can read people's energy. And so I think this is something that we need to also revive, bring back, is our ability to just see things. Then all of this like explaining of everything we could do without. We could just all come to see the truth, and then we wouldn't have to debate anymore, even because there is no place for opinions. There would just be maybe preferences in terms of what's your favorite color or what's your favorite food. It would be like personal preferences, but we wouldn't have to debate about reality because we could just recognize truth. So again, this is like we need to purge, we need to purify, and it starts from, okay, what do we take in on a daily basis? How do we, like, what kind of influences we're taking into our mind? I see the mind as an echo chamber, so whatever you take in keeps bouncing inside. And at some point it solidifies and it becomes like a living organisms in the garden of your mind. So what is there? Are there weeds? Are there lots of foreign invaders, plants that are taking over everything, that are coming from the outside? I think a big problem is that people can't even recognize what thoughts are their own, and what is something that is a conditioning, what is a program that has been planted, what is like a legitimate spell that is living in there. And the indigenous societies, one of their like ways that they would keep themselves healthy would be that people would periodically go through the process of mental and physiological and spiritual purging. Like they knew that in order to keep this temple sacred, I need to do some housekeeping. I need to clean my mind. But how much are we doing that these days? We're struggling to meditate. We're struggling to somehow silence the mind. But how can you silence a mind that is full of it? Imagine our consciousness is in storing every single thing that we've ever seen, experienced, heard, everything that we've ever come into contact with. It's there. Unless we go into the mind and we start picking away the things that are not serving us. And this is what we do in ceremony. This is ceremonial healing work. And this is what every single culture of this earth, throughout every single continent, they had knowledge and practice around ceremonial healing arts. How do you clean the mind? But what's happening in the West is we don't clean the mind, and so it's blowing out of proportion into this like monstrosity of a thing that we carry around. It's like this spinning wheel of doom and chaos, and we think that that's our perception. It's so distorted. This is why most people can't even think, because it's just a junkyard and like a circus inside, you know? So
So
it goes
true.
back to cleaning the mind, and then maybe it starts to be more balanced with your other, like senses of awareness, and you can start to feel through your heart, through the wisdom of your heart. Maybe you can start to sense. You can be, like you can use your bodily sensations into feeling into other people's emotions, and then you don't need to think so much. We don't need to waste so much energy into these conceptual ideas when we can just see and feel and recognize.
Yeah, and not be so quick to categorize, because it could be something of a vice, that can devise or whatever, right? And yeah, I'm being a little cute, obviously, but yeah, it's like over compartmentalization of all this stuff, and there's so much info overload, and yeah, you see like the egg-headed folks, too left brain oriented and stuff, and yeah, and then you got the memes with the big old juicy brain behind, and it's just like weighing him down. Like, yeah, that's some images going in my mind when you were talking. Yeah, well
Yeah.
said. Thank you. Yeah.
My teacher, my Shipibo teacher, Ricardo Amaringo, there was a man who came while I was apprenticing. So we were learning the healing arts in Peru. And one man came there. I was an apprentice, and he came to be like a patient. And he was very well studied. He was a scholar. He had multiple like PhDs. And in the sharing circle after the first ceremony, I remember my teacher said to him, "Your mind is full of lies. You need to stay at least 3 months to purge all of that junk out." And the guy was just in shock. He was like, "What?" He was so upfront. He was so straight, and he didn't explain anything. He's just like, "Yeah, we need to take care of your mind. It's full of junk." It's like,
And
yeah,
that's probably true for most of us, that aren't consciously, doing this type of purging, you
yeah.
know. And I love this, what you described as ceremonial healing arts, and a revival of that seems like a very good solution. And you have experience and training in the ceremonies of ayahuasca, which also demonstrates that how the indigenous use their senses to commune and communicate with plants to even determine, right, like how what that these plants had special gifts. So maybe share a little about that, and then how your experience with the ceremonies, including maybe ayahuasca, has been a life altering experience.
Hmm. Wow. Where to begin? It's such a big topic. Yeah, the way the indigenous people of the earth throughout, not just in the Amazon, the way that they are born into this earth is that they never get separated from the mother. They grow in the bosom of the earth, and they are intimately connected. It's not a belief. Like, it bothers me when people say that it's an animist religion. It's not a religion. It's reality. It's it's universal. Once again, you go into any indigenous culture, they all say the same. It's not a belief. So if you have your sensory perception working, you will also be able to recognize that the animals and the plants are all communicating all the time. And so they truly see that that is the living Bible of the living God for the living men, is nature. And the law is written into nature, natural law. So by tuning into these plants, you are taking in one emanation of the creator. It's the same with animals. So there's animal medicine, there's plant medicine, there's mineral medicine, there's elemental medicine. And so if you think that the creator is like this central sun that is this just emanating all of this knowledge, that the knowledge of the entire creation, then the magic of this realm is that we can learn, we can unlock this sacred wisdom by communing with all these different expressions of the creation. And so each tree has a spirit and a soul. And so this soul in plant kingdom is a collective soul. So let's say we have the soul of the spruce, which is very present here in Finland, and it's of course the Christmas tree. And there's a reason that it's an embodiment of the tree of life. And so you have the soul of the spruce. It's present in all the different spruces. So if you cut one spruce down, you're not interfering with the soul's journey on earth, because it's present in every single spruce. So this is why, like, communing with the plants is very different from, let's say, eating animals, because they're individuated souls incarnate into one body, whereas plants are incarnate into a collection of that same species. So then if you wanted to learn the medicine of the spruce, you could make a tea, you could collect the bark, you could collect the needles. Even every body part of this organism has a little bit different emanation of this medicine, but it holds a very particular, unique ray of the creator. And it will teach you. So if you would clean out space for this communion in your life, it would mean that you eat almost nothing at all, apart from a few very plain ingredients like maybe porridge or rice. You take out all like sensory stimulation. So you're in a room with no paintings, no picture. You don't communicate with any human being. You're celibate. You don't read. You don't listen to music. You're in a completely like pure space. You create a container. This is the way I've apprenticed. This is called dieting in the Amazonian tradition. And then you begin to consciously take in the spruce. So you could make a tea and you could drink it every day, and you could eventually begin to perceive the communication of this plant. And you can do it with every single plant on earth. But some plants are called master plants, and they are of a higher hierarchy in terms of wisdom and the knowledge that they contain. And oftentimes in the big trees, you have more of there. That's why oftentimes the big trees are called master trees, because they have more knowledge, more strength, more power in them. And yet you also have some humble herbs that seem quite, small, like tobacco, which is one of the like spiritual titans on this earth, actually. So it's funny the way they are, like the creator has hidden all of this knowledge into these plants. And so you could learn by communing with them. And ayahuasca, what's special about her is that it's a vine that grows symbiotically, growing, wrapping around all the different trees in the Amazon rainforest. Totally wild. There's no way to restrain her. She's everywhere. So all those lies about, oh, it's going extinct, that it's another fear strategy so that people wouldn't commune with her. No, she's absolutely everywhere. And she's wrapping around all these trees. And so she's taking in also the knowledge of all of these trees. So ayahuasca is truly the spirit of the rainforest. So this is why she's so different. And within her, she really has like the entirety of the knowledge of the earth. That's why it's called like one of the biggest master plants and one of the most special sacred teachers here. Because instead of having to commune with every single tree and all the plants of the rainforest, you take her in and she opens the entire realm of the earth for you to explore and to learn and of course purify and heal yourself. So yeah, this is the way you could commune with the plants, and then with animals, you could do it through just consciously connecting to them. So even just like meditating and really holding in your mind's eye an animal that you feel a kinship with, let's say the eagle or the lynx or the bear, and you observe the way they live, the way they move, the way they carry themselves, their form, you begin to receive their medicine, their wisdom. What is it that they hold? And we humans have it too. We too have medicine. But because we are no longer living in the wild, we've been stripped. We are a caged animal. It's not out of our own choice. You know, we have been taken into captivity and we've been made into a zoo animal. And this is why our journey, like the fundamental journey of our times, I believe to be able to like resurrect the original human being is cultural revival, and is to rewild ourselves and to learn all these basic skills so that we can return to the mother and we can return to our sacred mystery school, which is ever present, if only we begin to commune with her again.
Yeah, so beautifully said. Yeah, so articulate. So,
Yeah, spruce it up, Leslie. No.
yeah, I know. You know, and as I hear you, I know in my heart, like what you're saying is really very true. And most people in the modern culture, I think, are yearning, right, for this, but don't really know what it is.
Mhm.
And often, you know, I know for sure I feel very trapped. I felt very trapped in my life to this sort of rat race kind of survival, um, you know, system. And once you're in, it's hard to unwind, right? So this kind of like unwinding, purging, stepping out, releasing from this cage, you know, is really important. What are your thoughts in practical ways about how people can do that?
Hmm. I don't think you can do it alone. This is the thing. And this is why there's so much propaganda around community. And there's words like communitarianism and there's all these like kind of ideas around cults, and it's a big fear propaganda around do not by all means like do not come together, do not create community, because that's the only way we can get out of this. So I can share a little bit about our strategy with the cultural association that I've co-founded here in Finland. We just voted. Now we had our annual meeting over this weekend, finished yesterday, where we were focusing on like where do we actually invest our like time and energy and our collective assets this year. And one of them is about these collective living projects, so community projects. And I think it's about like coming out of these very expensive single homes or one family units and starting to like either buy or rent property together. I think that's the way that we can get out of this, and we can get out of those you know like costs of living and those jobs that people don't like to do, but they're having to do it because they have to pay their mortgage and so on. So imagine if we can start taking responsibility together, and we can start sharing like these financial burdens, that's the way. Then we realize that, oh, maybe I only need to work 3 days out of each week. Or maybe I have enough that I can actually start my own path and be an entrepreneur and living in the private, you know, like exiting the system completely and going in terms of like, you know, this trusts or not even the paper way, but just doing everything based on what do you call it, like personal exchange. So like there's so much is possible if we just come together and start thinking in terms of okay, what can we share? Like, how can we share the space? How can we share our paths? So these kind of collectives that are now starting to form within our tribe, they are centered around like shared goals in terms of, like, let's say, livelihood, like homeschooling. Can we create a homeschooling family circle and all live together and then look after each other's children together and then invite other people's families into that same circle of homeschooling? And then this is the way we could bring livelihood into the community. Or it could be around farming, or it could be like a therapist community. They offer retreats together and they live on the grounds as well. So I think it's all, that's why I said about the like social and like cultural aspect of really finding like what is your vocation? What is it that could be your place in this new earth, in this new but ancient society that we are reviving, and then coming together and creating these work collectives. And then through that, little villages, little communities.
Yeah, I like that. And I've been tossing around the idea of just, we can talk to our local farmers and be like, hey, like, I'd love to possibly help you out. Is there any way, or you could house me and we could work together and that kind of stuff? And just like little baby steps like that, it can go a long ways, I feel. And just like getting a good rapport with them in general is just very key. Eating local
Yeah.
foods and all that good stuff. And you're supporting the community as well, right? And all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's it. If we can share our resources and share our costs, this
Yeah,
is the
very
way it used to
pragmatic.
be.
Yeah, very pragmatic. So, what do you think are some of the barriers to people cooperating together in those environments? What are the things that people need, the personal work people can do to prepare for this very different type of thinking and being in a more
Hmm.
communal, shared environment?
I think one of the fundamental things that we've been working towards in our tribe is is to allow for differences of personal beliefs. Because if we are striving to only collaborate with people who think and feel exactly as we do about everything, it's going to be a big issue. And I think this is what's holding a lot of people back from coming together into these communities, because they're looking for someone who's thinking exactly the same way about every single thing. But if we think like, okay, how fruitful is it to be in a working community where there's certain things that we just don't debate about, but we all honor like the basic values that we share. So like leaving each other to each other's peace and allowing each other to, exercise our rights and not hindering on each other's space, no trespass, no interrogation, but we all have some kind of shared projects together. Can we collaborate? I think most people would say, yes, they're collaborating with all kinds of people from different ethnicities, different religions, different backgrounds, different personal beliefs, different diets, different kind of spiritual practices. And and if we truly can honor this individuality and this uniqueness, and then agree on just the fundamental values of how we associate, how do we organize ourselves, it would be quite easy to come together. But I think what we're asking from each other is kind of astronomical things. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of communities failing, because it goes back into these like debates about whose rules we're going to follow. And everyone has to act exactly the same way. And that's not natural, I don't think.
Making an echo chamber village, maybe? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I know what you
like
mean. Yeah, for sure.
I think it's enough if you like each other. Like if you get on, and that's just what's been wonderful about our community project, is that we truly have different of all different kinds of backgrounds and ethnicities and even religions. And some people, they they're growing because of this, because they're used to only associating with that one kind of niche, like maybe they're all carnivores, or they're all vegans, or they're all like into yoga, and then suddenly they're surrounded by people who are the polar opposite, and realizing that we can still have fun together, and we can still collaborate, we can still work towards the same goal. So I think it's a kind of question of spiritual maturity. Like somehow we need to evolve into this adulthood, the spiritual adult, or mature into adulthood, where we can accept and tolerate the fact that we do have different preferences, personal preferences, and really allowing that freedom of everyone to choose how they live their life. you know?
Yeah.
Right, as long as it doesn't cause harm to other people, Leslie, in a second. But yeah, it's like
Exactly.
natural law
Yeah.
principles, those are what you're talking about.
Natural
Do
law
no harm and all
principles.
that stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie, sorry.
Yeah. That's the question, is like, what are those fundamental values, that
Hmm.
are needed to be a foundation for cooperative interaction?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we have 9 values that we've written into our manifesto, and the way it works is that if you want to become a part of this tribe, then there's terms and conditions, and you have to agree to these, so that we know that there is already this kind of spiritual alignment. And that's to do with the way that we organize ourselves, our decision making processes, our communication culture. And so, yeah, it's all about the non-aggression principle, truly. It's about respect, reciprocity, responsibility. It's about keeping your word. If you want, I can go
Accountability. Yeah.
through, yeah, I can go through them with you. But yes, absolutely, accountability. And it's like, okay, if you're wanting to be respected, then respect others. If you're wanting to be trustworthy, then make sure that you are integrity, and that people can lean on you. How to be trustworthy. So a lot of it is actually about growing together, and then being willing to receive feedback sincerely. So one of our principles is not to weaponize your word against the other. So of course disagreement is allowed. It's actually celebrated. We lean on the sociocratic principles of near unanimous decisions. So it's not a mob rule where if someone, when we're making a decision together, that we just like ignore the dissenting voice. We welcome it, we take it into consideration, because it's an opportunity for us to actually expand. Maybe there's something we've overlooked. Maybe this individual has a different kind of life experience. They're able to serve something from their life experience to us that we have never been able to receive ourselves. And so we can grow by listening to their point of view. So it's about like, okay, let's have a dialogue first of all. And we only move forward if we've come to a semi unanimous decision. So it means everyone's at least not bothered by it. They may not agree with it, but they're not against it. So they could be like, okay, actually, it doesn't bother me if you're going to choose this way. I'm not against it. So at least you have to be neutral or supporting it. And so that's one thing, is that we don't weaponize our word against the other one. We don't character assassinate, or how do you say it? We don't attack. And if someone is going against these values constantly, breaking the group spirit, is mocking, is attacking, then we have a process called peace negotiation. And then this individual is invited into this process of mediation, where they're having to take responsibility for the way they are acting and what they are saying, and they're having to sit down with the individual that they are barking at. And it's a process of, okay, let's see if we can have some kind of reconciliation, if we can facilitate a meeting of hearts here, and really like restore the connection. And if this is to no avail, if the person declines, doesn't want to come into the mediation, then they are kicked out. And this is already in the terms and conditions. So upon joining, you already know that you have to be mature enough spiritually that you agree to this kind of behavior, you agree to this kind of processes, that you will be held accountable for what you're writing on our online forums, what you're saying in our meetings, how you are, that will be, like you are responsible for that and you'll be held accountable. And this is why there is kind of a natural screening process, that people who don't like to be held accountable, who like to hide behind their avatar and, chat shit online, but they have no integrity or spine to do it face to face, that kind of individuals just don't come in, they don't join. So I think we have to be, this day and age, I think it's all about terms and conditions, like really verbalizing that.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you're saying. It's like you have a foundation of values, but you also have parameters and agreements. And I see that as, the self-defense principle in operation in a gentle kind of organic community way.
Hmm.
Self-defense isn't just about, using extreme force, but also just setting boundaries, being clear in your expectations, making agreements, holding people accountable, saying no, right, or yes. That's brilliant. I am interested in hearing more of those 9 values for
Hmm.
sure.
Okay, I
Yeah,
can pull them up for you. Just
yeah,
one sec. Yeah, so sociocracy, I think that is something that is like a guiding light for us in terms of how we organize ourselves. And I think that word, it's a modern term, but I think it describes pretty well the way that indigenous societies would organize themselves. That we're talking about basically a decentralized natural network of different kinds of communities. So we are divided into 6 different regions in Finland, and each region has their own representative. And it's not that they are representing the people, they are simply representing the issues, or the communication, the needs of that community that is present. And then we have a unit that comes together, which is, we call like neuvosto. What would that be called? Like the advisory board. We are like, or the council of elders or something like this. And this is where all these representatives of these different regions, we have meetings every month. So we have monthly meetings. And then now we've just introduced another element, which is actually so brilliant. Just this last weekend, we voted on it. And it's that we are on unanimous decision, and we are 800 and I think coming up to 870 members, something like this. Yeah, so that each region is also going to have a representative of the internal atmosphere. So we have like the feminine principle and the masculine principle of like the organization, the like the structure, all of this is like the regional representative, and then the internal atmosphere representative, they are more like the ones who take care of the culture and the well-being and the spirit of the group. And then these two act as a team, and they are in communication with this through this central like meeting place, which is not a place of governing that is like a hierarchical place, but simply a place where we can come together and listen to each other, and share all these different processes and developments from different regions. And so that's also how we communicate then what is happening in different regions as we come together, and then this all travels like this. So that's kind of the way that we've structured ourselves, because in order to like organize coming up to 900 members now, we need some kind of structures like it. And I think this is one of the kind of misconceptions around anarchy, is people think that there is no structure, or that there is no agreements or no terms and conditions. They just think chaos and mayhem, but of course we all know that it couldn't be further from the truth. And this is what we're really attempting to establish, is a society that would have these anarchistic voluntarist principles while having a really like strong structures, so that it can stay and it can root and it can grow, actually. And I've just pulled up the values here. So yeah, each of it's quite long, but each of these values has these like declarations. So I can maybe read a few of them just so you get an understanding. I'll translate them freely because they are in Finnish. The first one is reciprocity. And then below the value, there is the declaration, what everyone agrees to. As a member of this tribe, I wish to both give and receive. I'm ready to bring my own individual energy into the collective whole and participate in the creation of our collective goals according to my personal life circumstances and resources. I understand that alone I can go quickly, but together we can go far. I take responsibility when I can, and I ask for help when I need it. So this is so that every value has some kind of concrete, pragmatic dimension to it. So it doesn't stay as some kind of wishy-washy philosophical thing, but like, this is how we behave, this is how we act. Okay, so that's number one.
Sweet and simple. I like it.
Yeah. Number two is harmony. As a member of this tribe, I understand that in the voting and decision-making situations, our purpose is to always find a solution that serves both myself and the entire tribe in the best possible way. And this is why I seek all the time to explore things from a broad perspective and always consider the others. So this is so that nobody would start kind of driving some kind of individual agenda. But remember that it cannot work unless it's somehow in harmony with everyone. And I think that's where humanity has gone wrong, is that we've stopped taking into consideration the others and the next generations, And the next part there is that I understand that the goal of the tribe is to serve, in addition to myself, the other members of the tribe, our beautiful human family, and the entire creation. So we're also taking in the element of nature and the animal kingdom. And then it says here that I will only bring into our meetings subjects and topics that stem from a love for life, nature, and humanity. And this is because we've come together so that we can build. We want to build a parallel society. And we all who are members of this association, we know what the other side is up to. We know their agenda through and through. And we've been looking at it so long that it started to kind of take the faith away. So we're purposefully saying we don't want that stuff. We don't want the doom and gloom into this circle. You can post all you want on your private, social media. But when we come together, we are here only to build, to create the solutions. So that keeps the harmony, and it's I have to say it's really working. And then maybe I'll read the last one. So after that there's also respect, and what does that mean in practice? There's peace, there's mercy, there's trust, responsibility, and then there's freedom. And I'll read the last part with the freedom. It says, I understand that everyone has the right to live in their personal everyday life according to the ways that they have chosen, as long as they don't violate anyone else's property, health, right, or life, or rights or life. I understand that freedom is a great gift. And this is why I also allow others the gift of freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom of religion, and freedom of political ideations. I understand that freedom stems from the eternal law written into creation. And this is why always along with freedom comes consequence and responsibility. And I recognize that genuine freedom expresses itself through love. For freedom that destroys is not freedom, but slavery.
So well thought through. and articulated with this beautiful balance, like I'm seeing where the masculine principles are coming together with the feminine care and the embodiment, which is the feminine, as I see it, and bringing us back to like how we treat each other, that it matters, right? Manners
It's
and so,
everything.
yeah, it's so much. And that is, I think, been sorely missing in so many, online forums in particular.
Yeah, and we have our own online, basically like our own Facebook. We have a whole like membership site where everyone can build their own profile. We have forums, we have like working groups, we have a calendar, we have all like everything that you need, a marketplace. And it's such a safe space. It's like, and this is being politicized, of course, this be safe and, pro everything. But I don't mean it that way, like genuine, loving, respectful environment. Like, man, does it feel good? Like
Yeah,
no one is there hiding behind their avatar and bullying you. That
yeah,
we're actually respecting each
No
other and we're
bots?
not.
No.
Yeah, no bots, no
Yes,
bots.
that's awesome.
And I have to say, that's what comes along with paid membership. We
yeah,
pay
right.
11 euros a month. All of us have a membership fee. Everyone pays. Doesn't matter what your role is, even if you're like in some kind of like special position in the tribe where you have a lot of responsibilities. You pay the same. Like everyone pays the same. And then with that, we gather the funds and the collective assets with we then fund our projects. And it works. And then so you have the screening of this terms and conditions, a value base that you have to accept, and then you have to financially commit so you don't get trolls. You maybe we've had one example of this entire year and a half that we've been together where there was a very young woman who had a crash on somebody and she got upset and then she started like trolling, and so like yeah, this can happen with immaturity, but we were able to figure that one out and it was all okay. But yeah, it's actually not that difficult. Like yeah, we can do this, everyone can do
So,
this.
Cheers.
so
Yeah.
I, I
No, go for it,
I
Les.
imagine that when something like that happens, right, that instead of just ignoring it or like attacking her, you had a process of
Yes,
communication. So how did that
exactly.
look? Yeah, what was that
Yeah.
process?
So we have straight away, because we have these like representatives of internal atmosphere. Then before we had just a group that was doing it, but now we make sure that each region actually has one as well. So they would get in touch with this kind of individual first privately and make sure like, are you okay? Like what's going on? Like I think this is the first step, the most important step. Is because if we create some kind of public display of like getting into someone's personal sphere of what is going on in their lives socially, or what kind of relationship conflict may be behind it, or what kind of distress they're expressing, it's not going to work. And sadly, this happens a lot on social media where it becomes this big drama, and then comes the vultures that are just feeding off this like interesting personal drama that thank God is not their own. So it makes them feel better. And then it just creates this like, yeah, this entire cascade of like lowering energy. So we try to make it private straight away and just get in touch with like whatever's happening, like that individual, like, hey, would you like to share what's going on? And just have a talk and then invite them into some kind of mediation. And
Wow, just like
sometimes
adults should do, huh? Like,
exactly, sometimes it means a walk in the forest,
that's
with
great.
somebody from the tribe, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
and you talk with them. Sometimes it's a phone call, but it's always about going back into like recognizing that something's wrong here, like something's happening. This person is feeling hurt, or nobody's acting like that if they're well. So rather than demonizing them and blaming them, the first step is to ask, like, how are you? What's going on? Can we help you? Can we
Yeah,
support you? Yeah.
yeah, having compassion coming from the
Yeah,
heart, and asking
exactly.
questions, being curious. really caring about the well-being of people and individuals. It's beautiful. Do you have a model or a template that you are sharing with other people interested in kind of modeling after this? Is there a way to access some of this that you've put together?
Do you mean in terms of this entire association
In
or the
terms of like the model that you're creating here of creating this cooperative community and these,
mm.
the value principles, I think it would be, wonderful, right, to create a book or a
Yes.
like where
Yeah,
people
we
can
should
say,
do that.
yeah, this is how it could be done, because
Hmm.
you have cultivated this imagination and then put it into form. And, I think we all have the potential to create and come up with similar things. But I also think that people's imagination is been thwarted, right? With all the
Hmm.
garbage that's been plugged in their brains. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts about that? About
Yeah.
sharing?
So yeah, that's a really good idea, and that's something I'm contemplating what it could be, whether it should be like a webinar thing or a course or, but we don't have an existing model for that yet. So I've been kind of the preacher. I've been I've been bestowed with that honor of like sharing the message of what we're doing. So I'm going around to different conferences and speaking a lot in my interviews about this because it gives me so much hope, I have to say, like personally, and then just putting it out there, I hope it gives others hope that we can do this. We can move from the if only to like, hey, we're doing it. Like it's
I think it is
amazing.
like stepping out and putting these concepts into action that will be like a domino effect, right? Because people need to experience something different. These principles of anarchy in action, in reality, to
Hmm.
not be afraid of it. It's like a desensitization of the
Hmm.
boogeyman in their head. And in order to let go, of those safety, edges,
Hmm.
the rules, then they have to kind of feel and see into the possibility of something that operates differently and is safe.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah,
and I'd like to say, I think one of the things that is perhaps blocking this in many places is that if people are trying to do it too much from a place of seeking profit, I think this is something we have to really, really be careful with and not to have it become somehow like personified into one influencer or one group of influencers. Like this is something we were really careful with, that it has to be something that everyone can feel that this is my thing, like this is my tribe, not that i've I've joined Leslie Powers's community, like no, then it's not going to last. We want to create something that everyone can bring their own input into it, and there can be a couple of catalysts, like the two of you could start something and then invite people and say, hey, what role would you like to take? And then making sure that whenever you're communicating about it, you're releasing videos or some kind of, documentaries about it, that there's lots of faces involved, that it doesn't become too personified into a couple of individuals, or that, like, I see some people are starting like private membership community around their social media, like maybe they think that they're being shadow banned or something, so then they have this like private, membership you can join, but it's like it's still to do with this like following thing, like, oh, I follow this individual, so I'm paying to be in her, like I'm her follower, her subscriber, rather than, hey, we're all coming together, we're all chipping in, and this is all coming back to us, like the flow of this investment is like rippling all across to all of us, and we're all building it together. Everyone's allowed to start their own, like we have work groups. Anyone can say like, hey, I'd like to start a homeschooling project. Okay, do it, and we support you. Okay, we lift you up. You do it. Okay, I support you with that one. So it's like mushrooms popping in the rain. Like it's nobody's one thing, it's we're all doing it together. And I think that's what we have to really cherish and be careful with, that it doesn't become a profit-seeking thing. So our goal is that whatever comes in, it goes right back into the community, and that it doesn't become personified into just some influencer's thing, that it has to be a collective, true collective.
Yeah, I agree. I've experienced that with an attempt to create a community, and really starting out from that standpoint of very co-creative, a co-creative process without any one person sort of holding the chips of how things need to be done. And where it fell apart was one uh, when one person or couple bought land, and then it became about their process,
Mm-hmm.
and it lost the co-creative aspect, and then people sort of just detach, it fell apart, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
other the other thing that came up that was difficult was, that initial vetting process of really establishing kind of the protocol. I think that's absolutely essential. And then having an understanding of maybe mental health, and some of the things that came up that I observed were like couples that weren't really solid and then separated, and became this very toxic influence on the whole, or people that weren't really aligned and agreeing, in those foundational values and that what it means, because we didn't do that extra step of taking a word or a concept and then really defining how it's embodied, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That came to me. I wrote these things down because of several different organizations where I've been involved in witnessing how things get co-opted, how like different movements get infiltrated. So I really was like, okay, what does this manifesto actually mean? Because I see all of like, you could probably even go to the company like website of some pharmaceutical company, and they could use words like harmony or health, like, okay, yeah, what is your definition of this value? Like, how do you actually embody it? So I found it to be essential to somehow open it up and make it into a declaration, because we know, right, like the power of the creative word. So if I'm reading it in terms of I, like I'm constantly saying I am understanding or comprehending, I agree. So you're already starting to like tune into this, like I am presence in term, like inside this community. What does it mean? And yeah, I have to say it's been the most important part, I think, of the foundational work we did to launch this, is to really name those values and what they are in practicality.
Yeah, it goes back to the trivium process. Get that grammar right, and yeah, you did a really
Yeah.
great presentation on that in Acapulco. That was awesome. You're also a part of
Thank
the
you.
Funnel Conference that Leslie helps organize, and if I'm aware of the time, I don't know if we're running short or if you got to go and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm just loving the flow, and yeah, this whole community talk is great. We have a mutual friend and fellow former guest, Brigitte Kessier, and I was in communication with her a couple of years ago, and she was acquiring this land and all this stuff, and like things were looking great for proper anarchy, and we were talking and going back and forth a little bit of just like, yeah, establishing these foundational axioms of truth and morality and all these things, and making sure that people stick to these contracts, if you will, not
Hmm.
in the legalese sense, but like it's
Hmm.
like the given your word, your soul's word, if you will, that level of trust and commitment, I suppose. Not everyone can do
Yeah.
it, and that's so be it, right? But yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
800 people stepped up to the plate in your area, so yeah, bravo, hats off.
Yeah, I think it's that people are kind of just fed up with this complaining about the way the world is going. And at some point there's this push, like, okay, we either got to do something about it, or we're going to be taken down with this, that there has to be another way. And what kind of world are we leaving behind to our children? And yeah, then it goes back to the indigenous ways of seven generation. Whatever we're doing today, can we imagine what is the impact of it 7 generations later? And it can't just be about you know, contemplating things. It has to also bear fruit. This is the thing. But I think one of the like maybe to share one more thing about what I think what has been one of the keys of success here is that we were thinking very big. We weren't thinking just like how to create one eco village or one community, but like how to create a nationwide tribe. So we started dreaming really big straight away. And then it doesn't get stuck in like these personal issues or personal circumstances, because we have so many people coming from different parts of the country, and we're starting to build this natural parallel society where we are now. So we don't have to all move to the same land. We have all across the country people living in different kinds of circumstances. Some are still living in a flat in a city, some already have land together with their friends, some have their own home, like own house. And we're just now like learning to trust each other so we can start the collaborations, and then maybe we start inhabiting more like villages and create these physical communities. But it starts from this different way of relating to each other, different way of communicating. So we heal the relations, we heal that realm, and then we can start thinking about like physically investing into land and schools and so forth.
So there's a step of building trust and natural relationships, right? Not rushing too fast, not putting the cart before the horse. It sounds like there's a patient
Mhm.
process that you've envisioned here, and allowing it to. Is there like a natural process that you're witnessing unfolding?
Yeah, it's a great transition that we're in right now. And I think it would be unwise to rush it. There's so many things people still need to work through within themselves to be able to jump out of that maybe corporate job or government job or whatever it may be. And so how can we start to already build community and what we like to say co-sovereignty and co-sustainability? We can live where we are. We can still do the work that we're doing, but coming together and alongside, gently start to move, us like it's a bridge. It's a way that we can, okay, when I've formed these relationships now, I can really trust these people. Now I can let go of this, corporate job and this rat race. But not many people have the nervous system even to be able to just like jump into the abyss. Some of us do that, but some that we need a transition period. So that's what we're attempting to build through
Yeah.
these relationships, so that there can be this foundation of support
Yeah.
energetically.
And it's a combination of in-person and online community building. Do you
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
could you have distances between some of you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we organize ourselves, like we founded this autumn, me together with 5 other entrepreneurs from this tribe, we founded this culture and wellness center here in Tampere in Finland. And we're all entrepreneurs. We do different things, but we operate under the same roof. And so this is one of like the tribe meeting places. So we host gatherings every month, sometimes several times a month, and people can travel from different places. We can come together there. So also when we start creating these like collective work, places, they can also work as a hub for the community. And so then we also start to revive different kinds of ways to come together, like around the solstice, around the equinox, around the full moons and the new moons, and we have fires. And yeah, so that's possible when we have these kind of places where we can gather. So I think that's one of the fundamentals too is to have some kind of shared spaces, because if it's only in the virtual, you can't really build trust the same way,
Yeah.
as
That
when you're.
insatiable spirit just kind of
Mhm.
acts up, and wants
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Leslie and I met several times. I even slept on her couch. There's a lot of trust between us. So yeah, yeah, good friends.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It makes a difference, when you meet people in person and you share those experiences. It really does. And So, to honor your time, we're winding down and wanted to see if there's any other key points that you want to share, from your heart on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an invitation to really tune in, for everyone to tune into themselves. And how does it feel if you could just stop fighting? How would that feel? Like this whole Rage Against the Machine thing, I've been doing that ever since I was a teenager. And now that I've kind of started to lay down my arms and focus on, instead of, you know, lifting my hands, in a fist as a weapon, what if I could use these hands to create something? And are we mature enough now for that process? That like, rather than fighting against the old, what if we just started creating the new?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a
Yeah.
good direction for us all to go, because it also will bring and build hope, which I think we all need to have those inspirations, those hope of seeing something new and maybe revived, as you're saying, that really
Mm-hmm.
reviving something very sacred and like returning home to the mother,
Mm-hmm.
home to each
Yeah.
other. Yeah, yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Please share where people can find your work and access more of your wisdom on all these topics.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, probably best is just to go to my website. It's hennamaria.community. And from there, you have all the links. So I'm on Telegram, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Also, my husband and I, we run retreats. So we have sanctuarywisdonorigins.com. You'll find a link to that actually there as well. And maybe also, I'll just put it out there, I will be in Mexico speaking live at this beautiful gathering called the People's Reset, just the end of this month. It's starting January 29th and running until February 2nd. So I'll be speaking there about community and cultural revival as well. So if you want to meet me in person and come exchange some ideas on how to create this beautiful world that we know is possible in our hearts, then yeah, come say hi. I'll be there in Morelia in Mexico.
Lovely. Another in-person gathering, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of synergy there, I'm sure, and inspiration. Thanks again, Henna Maria, for joining us. And I find this so fascinating. I could talk about this all day. I want to pick your brain endlessly, so I hope our paths cross again.
Thank you. It's
Yeah,
been
we
great
guys
to
are
be
on the
on the
One Great Work
show.
Network, so y'all are never too far away. So yeah.
Yeah, true. Cool. Peace
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
and
so
thank
much.
you for everyone listening. Please spread this video far and wide. Check out Henna Maria's work. Work towards the solution and embodying, this experience of tribe and harmony together. Yeah, I think it's so essential right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ciao.